Our next panel is going to look at expanding the project funnel, improvements and scalability in chemical recycling. So we're going to move to a different stream, which will allow brands to tackle PCR, post-consumer recyclate, in more applications. And in this session, we'll be focusing on how the improvements in chemical recycling are expanding opportunities for brands to use PCR in the many more applications. LyondellBasell, of course, advancing a diversified strategy, which you've heard about, which you will learn more about this afternoon. And we'll also be hearing now from the ISCC on how mass balance certification is helping brands to make credible and market-ready claims, but also good decisions. So let's get started, and please welcome our panelists, and I'll just call them up one by one, as I did the last ones. Jan Henke is director of the ISCC, that is the International Sustainability and Carbon Certification System. Please give him a warm round of applause. Jan, come on up. Giulia Picerno is here from Nestlé. Take a seat, Jan. Is here from Nestlé. She's the market circularity delivery lead for Italy and Malta. Benvenuto. Marie-Catherine Coquin is the R&I Packaging Materials Director at Danone. So, warm welcome to Marie-Catherine. And our very own Paula Sanabria Luque is from LyondellBasell. She's Senior Director, Marketing and Commercial Development. Come on up, Paula. Thanks for being here. And a warm welcome to all of you. Now, also, maybe just a quick round of introductions to the very, very sort of brief in terms of your positioning and how you fit into this picture of chemical recycling. And so we'll start with certification, because I know there's lots of questions out there for you, Jan.
So I've been involved in the ISCC since the very beginning, and as you all know, in the past few years we have heavily developed ISCC Plus. That's a certification system for the integration of different types of alternative feedstocks into the value chains. So we do certify bio-based raw materials, biocircular raw materials, and also plastic waste for mechanical recycling, but certainly also for chemical recycling. And I think we are the biggest system around in this space. And we were the first system to fully introduce a mass balance approach across the value chain, which actually then enables the plastic recycling via the chemical recycling route. We do this with an end-to-end certification, so really from point of origin of the waste all the way to the final product, and by now have also integrated or licensed actually more than 170 brand owners who then also make consumer-facing claims, also on product. And we also heavily are involved in the regulatory space when it comes to for example, SUPD, PPWR, but also to regulation on, let's say, greenwashing and on consumer-facing claims and empowering the consumer to make smarter choices.
We'll come back to that mass balance approach in just a moment, but let's go to Giulia, who is coming to us from Nestlé. Tell us about your perspective as a brand owner on chemical recycling.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here, first of all. Well, as a brand owner working in the food industry, we really think that nowadays we are presented with a great opportunity to accelerate circular economy thanks to the PPWR. And what is really needed is to, work as a system, so with our partners, our suppliers, and this is very important. And in this context, chemical recycling can really be the mean to reach these goals, which are quite challenging for the food industry, especially considering the goals that we are expected to reach for recycled content. So yeah, we see it as a great opportunity to research, develop, and build together with our partners.
Marie-Catherine, we'll just move right on to you, also involved in food packaging with Danone.
Yes, indeed. Hello, everyone. I'm Marie-Catherine. Thank you very much for the invitation. And actually, our job in Danone, in the materials R&D, is to develop the materials for Danone packaging for the future. So we need to get ready for these new materials to be implemented in our portfolio. And we see chemical recycling as one of the tools that we have to do that. So we've been working a lot on mechanical recycling, especially on PET. But now we need to integrate other polymers into this family of recycled materials. I can name it. Polyolefins, but also polystyrene. So we are really trying to understand what are the technologies that we will need for that in the future.
Thank you very much. And Paula, it's on a plate to you to talk about what LIV has
I think, you know,
in this.
Matthijs refers to when we started investing in mechanical recycling. And we taste what bales look like. We saw how the technology, what they can do. At the same time, we realized, first, if you remember yesterday, David sent some comments from the European commissioners, right? And they said, plastic is great, but end of life is an issue. And when we could understand that those bales, that this plastic waste needs multiple different technologies to be able to become a product again. So for us, that was the moment where immediately mechanical recycling and chemical recycling had to be working in parallel. And I think that's why it's so important, because if we really want to tackle the plastic waste, that is the butt of the fantastic use of plastic, then we need to have the two technologies working hand in hand to ensure that we use the right feedstock and we get to the right products in the future.
And Jan, let's come back to you. I'm just sort of trying to sort the iPad out here. Sorry for the little pause there. Let's get back to this mass balance, because of course there were some questions about that yesterday. We know that it's something that environmental groups obviously go after with claims that it's not transparent enough, potential for misleading claims, and obviously the fear of greenwashing. We know that in the US the EPA has rejected it. Why is it so useful, and what is the value chain doing to increase consumer understanding of this mass balance approach? Because that seems to be the crux.
Yeah. I think we have very high targets on the recycling, coming from the commitments that brand owners have in place, but also coming in particular from the regulatory space in Europe, but also in all other regions. And to achieve those also in an efficient way, we need to follow all recycling options we have. And advanced recycling simply is a complementary approach. We need all others. We need mechanical recycling. We have seen that yesterday. We need design for recycling. We need everything. But advanced recycling is required, and we also heard that in the previous panel. And to integrate advanced recycling, you need a mass balance approach, because we are using multi-billion-dollar existing assets, which you do not want to duplicate just to have a segregated value chain. This does not make sense. So this is where a mass balance approach is required. And as a matter of fact,
as a transitional path.
It may be a transitional path in the long run, but it will be there to stay, I have to say. And it's also entering regulation by now. So there is a large acceptance around it. And I would even argue that by now some non-governmental organizations and some greener NGOs do see a need for it and accept it under certain conditions. And we have mass balance also when we look at fair trade, for example. You know, when you buy coffee, fair trade coffee, it's a mass balanced coffee. You have in there fair trade and non-fair trade coffee. That may be easier because it's all coffee. And you know, with the petrochemical industry, it's a bit more complex what we are doing here, because we are including also these attribution approaches. But I think it's possible in a very transparent and fair way, and also it's possible to bring over this message to consumers.
Okay. Let's go to our brand owners, and perhaps just the question, what are the key drivers and barriers for brand owners to actually invest in chemically recycled solutions, and what is required to sort of support an acceleration in that space? Marie-Christine first, and then I'll go to Giulia.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So first, I think there's the commitment of the brand owner. We need to ground this willingness to go maybe a bit beyond legislation. And then there's legislation. So I think we have both drivers in Danone. And then what makes us go to the choice of chemical recycling is seeing at what are the options we have to answer to those requirements in terms of legislation and Danone commitments. So on the one side, we had the mechanical recycling that cannot do everything. And especially if you talk about polyolefins, we see many limitations and a variety of grades for which we will not be able to answer with mechanical recycling. So we need to look at other technologies. And that's where we find the chemical recycling, but also dissolution. And we put big hopes on dissolution. We really want to see what is going to happen there in terms of access for us to high quality material. So quality is a driver indeed.
Okay. Giulia.
I completely agree what the colleague just said, and yeah, I think it's really needed an integrated system. So we cannot reach all the goals that also the PPWR and all the sustainability legislation has set, and also our commitments only just with mechanical recycling. So we really need an integrated system, and to collaborate, to cooperate as a system, all our companies, we need to create an ecosystem of all the players are doing their part to reach these goals. And I mean companies, I mean consumers, I mean public authorities with regulation and with all the tools that can enhance and facilitate this process. So everyone has to do their part in a common and in a single strategy.
It's obviously leadership buy-in is required, and you're talking about understanding what's feasible today that requires sort of this internal and external alignment. What can upstream suppliers like LyondellBasell actually do to support the internal discussions of brand owners in order to facilitate that understanding?
Okay, let's say first of all, to facilitate this understanding in this process, for us it's important to create a shared strategy. Mm-hmm. This needs to be understood, participated, and really embraced by all our internal stakeholders, first of all, so our internal colleagues from other functions, and our external stakeholders, so our partners, our suppliers. So they really need to have on their agenda also our commitment and our goals. And to do that, for example, Nestlé has developed a packaging sustainability strategy, which is completely embedded in our overall sustainability strategy. And this is very important. We set specific targets. So we aim for 95% of plastic packaging to be designed for recycle by 2025, and we are reducing the amount of virgin plastic that we are using in our plastic packaging by 1/3 by 2025 compared to 2018 level. And to deploy this, we have developed this strategy, which is based on some pillars that, of course, request research and development, eco-design, collaboration and cooperation with suppliers and partners. So in this context, upstream suppliers can really help us in our internal discussions with their insights, with their expertise, with their experience. Of course, they can support our research and development. And on top of that, they can help us to ensure transparency throughout the value chain, which is increasingly important with PPWR and all the goals that we have to reach, especially for recycled plastic. So, yeah, I mean, we need to work together and be on the same page on this.
Paula Sanabria, let's come to you, I think, quite automatically after that answer, and just get a response. Obviously, what is LYB doing to accelerate not only the improvements that are necessary, but the scalability so that more PCR can actually be implemented or incorporated?
And I think to your point on having it on the strategy, Jim talked yesterday about LyondellBasell strategy. Second pillar of the strategy is developed a profitable circular and low carbon solution business, right? So it's anchored in the strategy of the company. And what we wanted to be sure is that we provide scale. We serve many markets. We wanted to be sure that we are going to be able to deliver the materials that our customers need at scale. So what we started very early on, and I would say the earliest if you compare to our peers, is that we looked at, okay, we are very proud of MoReTec, and I will not be a spoiler on what Martino and what you will see later in Ferrara, but we also were very conscious that that technology development will take time, and that we will learn from what we will do in vesseling to scale up in the US thereafter, and we doubled the capacity, but we also needed other players in that value chain as well. So we were very clear that we also will work with third-party technologies that will complement MoReTec, our own, and get agreements with them so that we will be able to deliver Circle and Revive, so chemical recycling-based polyolefins to our customers. And I think that's courageous, because I believe, you know, when you have this technology by your own, you kind of believe that that should be it, right? But you need to understand that customers have very different needs, and so also waste streams work in a different way so that we can adapt and be flexible and be ready for our customers to be able to serve them.
Very different needs, and on that note, I'm going to actually ask a question to our audience.
Perfect.
What I notice here is that our monitor isn't very properly positioned so that you can see it, so we might have to all just strain our necks here for a second to see the response, because this is going to be a multiple choice one. Let's pull up our WOPO question for this panel, which is, and we've got the QR code there again so that everybody's, what is the main factor that would accelerate the circular transition of your packaging through chemical recycling? And the answers available are harmonization in mass balance accounting methods, or clear regulations, or PCF, product carbon footprint benefits. And final answer would be clear guidance on safe and easy to understand consumer claims. So let's see what we get here, and I will even just stand up so that I can see what happens with, if we get a little graph. We haven't done one of these yet. See what kind of a response we get there, and then we can just come back to our panelists. I'm not sure if you can choose two. You'll have to figure that out yourselves. It's probably calculating. There we go. So we have 54% for clear regulations, followed not so closely by. All the others are relatively similar, followed by PCF benefits, and then clear guidance on safe and easy to understand consumer claims, and harmonization in mass balance accounting methods is actually in last place. Yeah, almost 57% clear regulations. So what does that say to you, Paula?
I'm not surprised. I think, you know, when we talk about clear regulation, and you mentioned PPWR and SUPD, right? So we were expecting 3 years ago to see very clearly in the text that would enable chemical recycling and a mass balance calculation. And that has been delayed for 3 years. Right? So I think that doesn't help anybody. What I also can mention is that for 3 years we've had a lot of discussions with DG Environment in Brussels, and there has been always willing to go to that step, and we hopefully will see that language after the summer. And I think that's a very, very important point. And I think still I hear a lot of questions about that. I don't think there is any more question on is chemical recycling and mass balance going to be accepted by regulation. That's a fact. It is. How the details will work is what we need to understand in the coming months and probably years. But I think that's very important for us. That's critical for, I guess, many people in this room. And about packaging waste regulation that has been signed, passed, and of course there are a lot of details that need to be clarified. And I think what I will also propose from our side is, like, we have been engaging a lot with regulators in Brussels, but not only, also in the member states. And we welcome all the conversations across the value chain with our customers, with the brands, with the different stakeholders. We go as one value chain together, and we talk about this to regulators, and that makes a lot of effect. So, you know, I also opened the invitation to everyone to work with us on that, but there is no any more doubt is maybe the details that need to be understood, and also we are going to have mandates on recycled content, right, for all the packaging applications. So I think at least let's also not get into the distraction of delaying this. We do need you to understand, because this will require huge investments in the coming years to be able to deliver on those.
Okay, maybe we can go to Danone. Maybe I could get the questions back sort of from the audience. Thank you very much for that WOPO question, but I know there were a lot of questions coming in. I'd like to be able to access those again here in the tool. But just in the meantime, let's get Danone's position on this, on the new PPWR mandates. What material technologies are you considering as a way to fulfill those mandates for polyolefins?
Well, we're considering indeed all the types of recycling that will be out there and that are not ready yet. And that's where I like to make the link with the clear regulation, because for me, what is key is the reality check. This is key, to have regulation that can actually be applied and that is supported by the industry. And that's why we need knowledgeable people to actually build these implementing acts to make sure that we will make things feasible and sustainable. Otherwise, I mean, we know what recyclers can do, we know what they cannot do, and we know also what brand owners cannot do. And sometimes, and I feel that because we are participating in the CEN Design for Recycling discussions, and we see that there are many things that are out of the blue with no real reality check. So for me, that's the grounding really in this discussion. We need to make things real and feasible.
Giulia, have you got anything to add based on that clear regulation response there from our audience?
Well, it was not so voted, but also the communication, the claim part to the consumer is critical. I mean, for a brand owner, it's important also to be sure that we can communicate in a solid and honest way to consumers, and reliable way, this recycled content and everything about sustainability, actually, especially with the coming directives on green claims and empowering consumers. So this is also important to define and to be sure that we can claim this characteristic in a simple way that needs to be understood by consumers, but that is also a solid way.
Okay, thank you very much for that input, and I'm going to come to Jan now because we have a lot of questions here for the ISCC, and I'm just going to try and make sure I sort of get not too much repeat, but and you may have already touched on this in your previous answer to my question, but why is chemical mass balancing perceived as so difficult to understand while everyone is actually understanding green energy, which is also mass balanced?
Green energy is a good example, because there we also started with low shares of renewable electricity, which you feed into the grid. And no one really had a big problem with that. And now we are increasing shares step by step, and you get to whatever, 40% renewable electricity in the grid. And everyone is accepting that. But we also built up some systems around that on how to monitor this share. We have guarantees of origin system, we have rules on PPAs and everything. So there it did work out. It may be more complex, as said, when we move to these type of value chains we are looking at this event here today.
It's
but
really because there's another question here, having this trace the atom versus the energy approach.
Yeah, in the end, for sure, if you have a final product and you can say this is 100% physically from recycled material, that's an easier to understand claim compared to saying it is maybe 100% from recycled material, but on a mass balance basis only, which guarantees you via certification across the value chain that the equivalent volume of recycled material has been fed into the value chain. So the claims are different, and we also need to be transparent about that, and we need to find smart ways for brand owners to communicate the mass balance approach to consumers. But I think it is happening. I mean, as said, we have 170 brand owners using ISCC Plus to make on-product claims to consumers. And we have very nice examples, also with additional stories on the website, etc. We've also discussed these cases with the European Commission, for example, under the Green Claims Directive, under Empowering Consumers Directive, and they said it's fine with us if you manage to create this transparency. And for sure, you may need a bit more explanation, you may need a bit more space on the packaging compared to a simple claim saying 100% recycled.
We talked about the trade issues that arise, obviously, from the EU regulation, and there's a question here: is the ISCC prepared to address fake certificates of materials coming from third countries and protect the value chain here in Europe with their scheme?
Yes, I'm sure we are. We have, as the only system around, we have a large integrity team. We are running our own integrity program with our own auditors, which we can send around the globe to double-check what companies are doing, to double-check the work of certification bodies, to double-check the work of individual auditors. For sure, you need to take into account if there are markets where there are very high incentives and where you get a very high price premium for recycled or bio-based versus conventional, or for certain type of materials that everyone wants versus other types of bio-based materials that are not so popular. The example of palm oil. If these incentives exist and there's a big price differential, then incentives for fraud also increase. So there we need additional measures, and there I think also support by regulation is required to implement these measures consistently across all certification schemes. And then this can for sure be tackled.
I have one other question here that relates to that, because the question is, how could mass balancing methodologies be harmonized globally? Is there any sort of vision for that, obviously with different approaches on different continents?
I mean, first of all, we try to harmonize within our system, so that today we don't have like 10 different mass balance schemes. That does not exist. We try to do this together with our large stakeholder dialogue on a global base, with our ISCC association with more than 300 members and all our thousands of system users who join the stakeholder dialogue, also most of the companies here today. So this helps a lot on harmonization. And then I think now with SUPD, where for the first time we get this official acceptance of chemical recycling via mass balance and certain attribution approaches. This will also help to harmonize, because brand owners for sure will also look at that, and my assumption would be that they will not run with different types of mass balance systems in different regions, but there will be a tendency to harmonize that. And I think that's a positive signal, and this makes it easier for industry and in the end also easier for certification. And from my experience in Asia, but also in North America, there are very similar discussions to what we are seeing here in Europe right now.
Thank you very much for those insights, and I'd like to come to our brand owners because we are getting close to our time, but there's two questions here that I'd like to combine for both of you, Marie-Catherine and Giulia. What kind of actions do brand owners, first of all, the question, are brand owners accepting that sustainability has a cost? Perhaps you can talk about what you're hearing outside, because obviously your example, I think that's an affirmative, but what kind of actions do brand owners take to convince their customers to accept higher pricing for chemical recycling based materials, or is that green premium being absorbed also on your end, as we saw with Samsonite yesterday?
Yeah, of course it has a cost. Sustainability, not only about chemical recycling, but about all the projects, about sustainability in general. But we think that it's not a cost that consumers has to pay. And yes, I mean, we would like that consumer is happy to consume our products, to choose our products, also because of our sustainability strategy and our sustainability commitment that is behind. But yeah, I mean, sustainability is an integrated part of our strategy, of our overall strategy. So it's important that it's our cost. Of course, it has a cost, and it will be always more challenging to do it. Because of many reasons, also climate change, but yeah.
Any comments from you, Marie-Catherine?
Yeah, sure. On our side, it's a bit difficult to sell products to consumers saying you need to pay more because it's sustainable.
Indeed.
Maybe consumers will like to pay more because we have an incredibly good, tasty yogurt, maybe, but definitely it's not something we can push for. So what we're trying to do is trying to embed that on cost within our efficiency. Say, how can we work better to be able to pay for that? How our supply chain can work better to be able to pay for that. So this would be more our approach, because we know that it's difficult to sell sustainability to consumer.
Indeed. You got a comment, Jan?
Yes. I think what is key here is that we cannot reach our targets with some premium or niche markets where price premiums may be paid. We need to make this a mass market. It needs to spread. We need scale. And also to achieve this scale, we need the mass balance approach right now. So I think there is no real alternative.
Pretty clear from these discussions. Paula, I'd like to just finish with you. We've reached pretty much the end of our time. Maybe you can just comment on what you've heard here from our panelists and the nature of the questions coming from the audience.
I hope it's clear from this panel discussion about what is happening and what are the efforts for LyondellBasell on chemical recycling. So I think I do see this acceptance of mass balance widely further understood. And again, we wanted to support everyone that still has questions that come back to us on that. I think it's clear that everything I'm saying is that we want to scale. Scale comes with efficiencies. But this cost will remain for a longer time. As you said, it's not value because you will price it higher, but you will loyalty from your consumers, right? And so we continue to create that sustainability is embedded in the products that we will sell. That's what also we are doing. So I think it's very important for us. We want to lead in chemical recycling as we do in mechanical recycling. So I hope that this was helpful for you all, and waiting to hear more from Martino and from the visit in Ferrara.
Improvements and scalability in chemical recycling with a lot of great audience participation. Thank you very much to all of our panelists for taking the time to give us these insights here today. Jan Henke, Giulia Picerno, Marie-Catherine Coquin, and of course Paula Sanabria. And let's have a round of applause for our panelists and see you back here at 11. Thank you. Thank you very much.